Ever wondered if human ingenuity always comes with a healthy dose of common sense? Not always. Sometimes, in their fervent pursuit of a solution, people created things so utterly bizarre you'd struggle to believe they ever existed. Today, we're diving deep into the world of history's most insane, peculiar, and at times utterly preposterous inventions. Get ready to be amazed, chuckle, and repeatedly ask yourselves, what in the world were they thinking? Many of these truly wild ideas sprung from an era when the world was changing at a breathtaking pace. The early 20th century, the roaring Industrial Revolution, and even 2 world wars. These colossal shifts were powerful catalysts, pushing engineers and even simple dreamers to experiment with audacious, sometimes desperate solutions. They might not have had computers or advanced materials, but they certainly had an immense drive to make life better, easier or safer. Sometimes their efforts were nothing short of genius, and other times, well, you're about to see for yourselves. So, kicking off our parade of absurdities is an invention born from the harshest winter conditions. Imagine living somewhere where a blizzard isn't just a picturesque word from a fairy tale, but a genuine obstacle that makes even a simple trip to the store feel impossible. What's the solution? A modern person would just pull on a hood and goggles. But back in 1939, Canada came up with something a bit more imaginative. Meet the blizzard face cone. Yes, you heard that right. This contraption looked like a giant clear plastic ice cream cone, but with a pointed tip. You'd wear it right on your head, and the idea was that this cone would, like an icebreaker, cut through the snowy onslaught, shielding your face from wind and stinging snowflakes. Visually, it was, shall we say, futuristic and a tad unsettling. Someone wearing this device would have looked like a bizarre character straight out of a 1930s sci-fi B-movie. It's tough to picture breathing comfortably in this thing. Or what happened when the plastic inevitably fogged up from the inside, and visibility, surely, would have been almost zero. Despite its highly dubious practicality, this invention perfectly illustrates just how far human ingenuity can stretch, in the quest to make life even a tiny bit more comfortable. Next up, in our collection of the absurd, if our last invention focused on comfort, this one is all about maximum efficiency, though in a highly questionable area. Get ready for a mouthpiece that allowed you to smoke an entire pack of cigarettes simultaneously. Yes, you heard that right. It was a contraption resembling a strange comb, into which all 20 cigarettes were neatly slotted. The user would light them all at once and, well, presumably, enjoy the experience. What was the purpose of this? Was it an attempt to cut down on smoke breaks during lunch, or a guaranteed way to make an unforgettable impression? Just picture the scene. A person engulfed in a dense cloud of smoke, attempting to take one single, colossal drag. This invention is a perfect illustration of how the more is better philosophy can be taken way, way too far. Today, this looks like a prop from a sketch comedy show. But believe it or not, someone once genuinely thought this was a brilliant idea. Now, let's talk about multitasking. These days, we pride ourselves on answering emails over lunch. But in the early 20th century, they took multitasking to a whole new level. Get ready for the family bicycle with a sewing machine. No, really. The design was ingeniously simple. The head of the family sat up front, pedalling and powering this ingenious contraption. Behind him, on a specially designed platform, sat his wife, with her sewing machine. And sometimes there was even a spot for a child on the side. The entire concept was about absolute time saving. While the family was cycling to a picnic or visiting friends, the wife wouldn't waste a single moment. She could hem trousers or mend a shirt right there, on the go. No wasted hours whatsoever. Of course, the practicalities weren't exactly top of mind. Just try to sew a straight seam while bouncing along a bumpy road. This invention is a perfect testament to an era where the pursuit of efficiency was so relentless, common sense simply couldn't keep pace. Moving beyond family road trips, let's explore an invention with far more chilling implications. This gadget could have been plucked straight from the pages of a spy thriller, where engineering ingenuity collides with a grim, dark reality. Behold, the camera revolver. And yes, it's precisely what you're imagining. A small camera was cleverly integrated right into the firearm's frame. The instant the trigger was pulled, the camera's shutter would snap open, perfectly synchronized with the gunshot. The concept, however gruesome, was rooted in a chilling forensic logic. The premise was that such a photograph could capture the final moments of the victim's life, and perhaps even the attacker's face. Essentially, it was an evidence-gathering device that paradoxically also created the very crime scene it was meant to document. Just imagine, the last thing someone sees is a flash. But was it from the camera or the muzzle flash? It's arguably one of the most macabre and bizarre combinations of functions ever conceived. But enough with the dark spy gadgets. Let's move on to a timeless topic, the pursuit of beauty. And as you're about to discover, the sacrifices people made for beauty could sometimes be incredibly bizarre. Introducing the dimple maker. In the early 20th century, dimples were considered an incredibly charming and attractive facial feature. But what if nature hadn't blessed you with them? The solution was simple: create them mechanically. This contraption looked more like a dentist's instrument than a beauty accessory. It consisted of a spring-loaded wireframe designed to be worn over the head. From either side, two small rods extended, ending in rounded tips. These tips applied forceful pressure to the cheeks, precisely in the spots where the user hoped their coveted dimples would eventually form. Users had to wear this device consistently, hoping that over time their facial muscles would remember this indentation. Whether it actually worked is debatable, but it's safe to assume it was incredibly uncomfortable. This perfectly illustrates how the saying, "beauty is pain," was sometimes taken far too literally. If you thought our previous inventions were bizarre, how about we kick off your day with a real shocker? We've all been there. The struggle of dragging yourself out of bed, hitting snooze 10 times, practically begging the universe for just 5 more minutes. But what if your bed simply didn't give you that option? Allow me to introduce perhaps the most radical solution to sleep problems ever conceived. The ejector bed. Invented in 1956 by British engineer Charles Rice, this bed meant business. At the appointed time, instead of a gentle melody, it would sharply tilt with a deafening clang, literally catapulting its sleepy owner onto the floor. Cruel? Yes. Inhumane? Perhaps. Effective? Absolutely. Oversleeping was simply out of the question. The inventor even included an adjustment for the ejection force, presumably for those who preferred to wake up not just on the floor, but across the room. It was the ultimate alarm clock, turning every morning into a miniature extreme sport. The perfect invention for anyone who routinely loses the battle with their duvet. From clunky beginnings to sleek entertainment, the evolution of audio technology has been remarkable. Today, if you want to listen to music or a podcast, you just pop in tiny wireless earbuds. But back in 1949, the idea of portable audio was a far more cumbersome and conspicuous affair. Enter the radio hat. This was a genuine straw sombrero fitted with a full-fledged tube radio receiver. Antennas and tuning knobs visibly jutted out, while batteries, likely tucked away in the brim, gave it significant heft. Just picture this, strolling through the park, with the latest news or a catchy jazz tune emanating from your headwear. Bystanders would likely stare, a mix of awe and amusement on their faces. It was truly the pinnacle of technology for its era. Sure, it was heavy, cumbersome, and probably only caught a signal sporadically. But this peculiar and somewhat ridiculous hat was one of the very first steps towards the portable gadgets we carry in our pockets today. The great-grandparent of modern iPods and smartphones. For those who loved a good wash but didn't always have easy access to running water, people in the past found a clever solution. What do you do if you're out camping, at a remote cabin without plumbing, or even just at home when the water gets shut off? Enter the portable shower. Its design was brilliantly simple. Essentially, it was a durable, waterproof bag with a hose and a small spray nozzle attached. The operating principle, pure physics, with a dash of acrobatics thrown in. You'd fill the bag with water, Find a sturdy tree branch or a high beam and hang it as high as you possibly could. Then gravity would do the rest, and water would start flowing from the hose. Of course, the water pressure was, to put it mildly, far from impressive. And the water? Well, it was typically ice cold, unless you were clever enough to leave the bag in the sun for a couple of hours beforehand. Yet, this simple and effective idea proved so successful that its modern counterparts, today's camping showers, are still widely used. So, it stands as one of those crazy inventions that was, in fact, incredibly practical. But what if you're desperate to learn how to swim, yet terrified of the water? Or maybe the nearest pool is just too far away? Not to worry. Inventors of the past had a solution for that too. Allow us to introduce the dry land swimming trainer. This was a special contraption designed to let you practice your swimming motions without getting a single inch wet. Several variations of this ingenious device existed. One version resembled a bench, with the user lying on their stomach. Special cables with counterweights were attached to their arms and legs, simulating water resistance. Another, more elaborate model featured an entire frame that supported the swimmer's body horizontally, allowing them to freely flail their arms and legs. From an observer's perspective, it looked quite comical. A grown adult, suspended mid-air on their stomach, desperately swimming through the room. Of course, such a trainer couldn't teach the most crucial skill, staying afloat. However, for perfecting stroke mechanics, it might have been quite useful, an ideal solution for aquaphobic athletes. Let's talk about transportation. We're all accustomed to bicycles having 2 wheels and cars having 4, but throughout history, there have been bold innovators who thought that a single wheel was all you needed to get around. So, meet the monowheel, also known as the monocycle. This invention was a true pinnacle of early 20th century minimalism and futurism. Picture an enormous wheel, roughly human height. The rider didn't sit on it, but inside it, in a specially designed frame. They would pedal, and a gear system would then spin this colossal wheel around them. It looked incredibly striking, like something straight out of a Jules Verne science fiction novel. However, in practice, things weren't quite so glamorous. Operating such a machine was incredibly challenging. Any sudden turn or braking risked losing balance, and the most unsettling phenomenon was the so-called hamster wheel effect. If the rider braked too abruptly, their entire inner frame could continue to rotate forward due to inertia, essentially performing a somersault inside the wheel. Despite these significant drawbacks, the mono-wheel concept continues to captivate inventors, with modern iterations occasionally showcased at technology exhibitions. Engineering ingenuity wasn't solely dedicated to civilian welfare. It also served military needs, and in that realm, ideas sometimes emerged that teetered on the edge of sheer brilliance and utter absurdity. One such invention was the curved barrel rifle. Yes, you heard that correctly. The rifle's barrel was deliberately bent at an angle, sometimes 30, sometimes even 90 degrees. The concept was simple and at first glance ingenious, to allow a soldier to fire from behind cover or from a trench without exposing their head or becoming vulnerable to enemy fire. In practice, however, things proved far more complicated. Firstly, bullets passing through such a curved barrel became severely deformed, flying in every direction but the target. Accuracy was virtually non-existent. Secondly, the barrel itself, subjected to immense pressure and friction, wore out after just a few hundred shots. Sometimes it even ruptured completely, posing a significant danger to the shooter. Despite its ultimate failure, this concept stands as a vivid example of tactical thinking that attempted to solve a real combat problem in a highly unconventional way. Now let's talk about an invention that today would spark outrage from any parent and child welfare agency. Yet back in the 1930s, it was genuinely considered a practical solution for childcare. Meet the hanging window baby cage. Back then, many families lived in cramped city apartments without balconies, and it was widely believed that fresh air and sunlight were vital for a child's health. The solution they devised was both simple and shocking. A sturdy metal cage, not unlike a large birdhouse, was suspended outside the window of a multi-story building. An infant would then be placed inside this cage, where they could play and enjoy the fresh air, while the mother attended to household chores. Its creators assured the public that the structure was absolutely safe and securely fastened to the window frame. Just imagine the scene, a baby playing contentedly in their cage, suspended, say, 5 stories up, with the bustling city life unfolding far below. Today, this looks like sheer madness. Yet for its era, it was simply another testament to how people endeavoured to adapt to metropolitan living, utilising whatever means were at their disposal. All right, enough with the lofty topics. Let's bring it back down to earth, or more precisely, to the beach. Summer, sun, sea. What's missing from this idyllic scene? A fashionable swimsuit, naturally. But what if your swimsuit wasn't made from fabric, but from wood? Believe it or not, back in 1929, someone had a truly peculiar idea. Introducing wooden swimsuits. They were crafted from thin, flexible strips of spruce wood, cleverly joined to somehow conform to the human shape. The main selling point? These swimsuits were advertised as being incredibly buoyant. Essentially, you were wearing your own personal life vest. Logical? Absolutely. Comfort, however, was clearly an afterthought. Can you even begin to imagine what it must have been like to wear a rigid, albeit somewhat flexible, wooden contraption? Imagine the relentless chafing, the restricted movement, and the incredible weight once soaked. It's no surprise, then, that this innovation never quite became a beachside sensation. Nevertheless, it certainly earned its odd place in history as one of the strangest attempts to blend fashion, safety, and a completely unsuitable material. Now let's talk about an invention designed for urgent situations, yet it looked like something straight out of a giant robot movie. Imagine an emergency. A flash flood washes away a small bridge, or a military unit urgently needs to get equipment across a deep ravine. What do? Building a new bridge would take ages. This is precisely where the mobile folding bridge came into play. This was a massive, unwieldy structure, typically mounted on a wheeled chassis and sometimes even a tracked one. Essentially, it was a specialised truck that, instead of a cargo bed, carried a multi-folded bridge. Once on site, the driver, using a mechanical drive, could swiftly unfold this behemoth, extending it across the obstacle. The core idea was unparalleled speed and mobility. There was no need to wait for engineers or construction materials. The bridge literally drove itself to the problem. Of course, these systems were complex, expensive, and could only span relatively short distances. Yet, the ingenious concept proved so effective that modern equivalents of these mobile bridges are still indispensable to armies and emergency services worldwide today. Human history has witnessed its share of grim periods when inventors had to prioritise survival over comfort. The device we're about to explore perfectly illustrates this, emerging from the widespread fear of chemical warfare during World War II. Meet the gas mask pram for babies. As air raid sirens echoed across Europe, adults would don their gas masks. But what about the tiniest children, those too small for a standard mask? This somewhat eerie-looking device was specifically designed for them. The pram was completely sealed, almost like a miniature capsule or a small, wheeled, hyperbaric chamber. A special filter with a hand pump was located on top, which the mother had to constantly operate to provide purified air to the inside. The baby was entirely sealed off from the external environment. This wasn't some quirky experiment or a pursuit of ultimate efficiency. Instead, it stands as a silent, chilling monument to its time, a symbol of anxiety and the desperate measures parents took to shield their children from the horrors of war, no matter the cost. Before the advent of radar, detecting enemy aircraft relied on sound, not electronics. To pick up the hum of engines from tens of kilometres away, engineers had to devise truly massive and peculiar contraptions. Meet acoustic locators, also known as warriors. These were massive mechanical structures, featuring several large horns or parabolic dishes that resembled giant hearing aids. An operator would sit at the centre of this setup, don headphones connected to the horns, and manually rotate the entire structure, trying to pinpoint the loudest sound. The system allowed them not only to hear approaching aircraft, but also to roughly determine their direction of flight. These locators looked like something straight out of a steampunk universe. Rows of giant metal ears, silently listening to the sky. They were cumbersome, far from precise, and utterly useless against fast-moving aircraft. Yet, in their time, before the radar era, they were the only way to detect an incoming aerial threat. Today, to avoid getting lost, we simply pull out our smartphone and open a navigation app. But how did drivers find their way back when GPS, satellites, and even the internet didn't exist? Enter the mechanical navigator, the great-grandfather of modern GPS. This clever device looked much like an oversized wristwatch and mounted right onto a car's dashboard. Inside, you'd insert a special paper scroll with a hand-drawn route map. The real genius was in its operation. The navigator connected via a flexible cable directly to the car's speedometer. As the car moved, this cable would rotate, slowly scrolling the paper map within the device's viewing window. This allowed the driver to see their real-time progress along the route. Naturally, the system had its limitations. You had to buy a separate scroll cartridge for each journey, and if you took a wrong turn, the navigator would become completely useless. However, the very concept of automatically scrolling a map based on distance travelled was truly revolutionary for its time. Shifting gears from road navigation, let's talk about protecting ourselves from the elements. This time, however, the focus isn't on the entire face, but on something far more precious: your painstakingly applied makeup. Back in Hollywood's golden age, actresses would spend hours perfecting their look. It would have been an absolute tragedy if a sudden downpour or snowfall ruined all that effort and beauty. To combat this very problem, a unique solution emerged: a dedicated makeup protection mask. Imagine a large clear plastic cone or dome that completely encased the face and even the hairstyle. It looked rather like an upside-down fishbowl, or perhaps a piece of a spacesuit. Women would don this contraption over their flawless makeup and perfect coiffure, allowing them to venture out confidently, come rain or shine. Not a single raindrop or snowflake could touch their face. Of course, the sight was undeniably strange, even a little comical. Just imagine a street bustling with women, encased in these individual plastic bubbles. Yet, for the actresses and fashion-forward women of that era, it was a practical, if slightly absurd solution to a very real problem. It was, in essence, a personal force field against the elements. The dream of riding a wave is as old as time itself. But what if there are no waves and you're itching to ride a board? Or what if you simply want to go faster than the ocean's power allows? In 1948, one inventor decided he wouldn't be limited by Mother Nature. And that's how the motorized surfboard was born. The idea was simple yet audacious. Take a regular board and strap an engine to it. The design looked rather clunky. A small gasoline engine was mounted at the rear of the board, powering a propeller submerged in the water. The entire system was steered with handlebars, much like those on a bicycle. The rider stood on the board and, instead of paddling, simply hit the throttle. Unsurprisingly, this invention was heavy, loud, and probably not very agile. It certainly stripped surfing of its meditative quality. However, if we look at this design with a broader perspective, we can recognise it as the ancestor of modern jet skis and jet surfs. The concept was ahead of its time and the available technology, but the underlying vision was absolutely correct. And to round off our list today, we have an invention that was truly ahead of its time, a bold step into the future that ultimately proved too complex for its era. We're all used to human mail carriers bringing our letters and packages, but what if a robot handled the job instead? Introducing the robot mail carrier. Back in the late 1950s, the US Postal Service actually experimented with small automated carts designed to deliver mail autonomously to residential neighbourhoods. This particular robot, affectionately named Mailman Mailstream, looked like a small battery-powered van. It would slowly navigate a pre-programmed route along the sidewalk, making a stop at every house. Residents simply needed to step outside and collect their letters from a dedicated compartment. The big idea was to free up human mail carriers from the more routine aspects of delivery. However, the technology of that era simply wasn't ready for such a task. The robot frequently veered off course, struggled to overcome obstacles, and was, unfortunately, vulnerable to vandals. Ultimately, the experiment was shelved, but the core concept of autonomous delivery is incredibly relevant again today, as we see it brought to life in modern drones and sophisticated delivery robots. So, Mailman Mailstream wasn't a failure. It was simply the first to try and realise this ambitious dream. But beneath the surface of these bizarre inventions, from the catapult bed to the baby gas mask, there's far more than just eccentricity. Each of these mad creations is a vital building block in the wall of human progress. They stand as a testament to our relentless drive to solve problems, even when the solutions appear utterly absurd to us today. And here's where the real insight lies. What's truly astonishing is that many of these seemingly failed ideas actually contain the seeds of future successful technologies. The motorized surfboard, for example, was a precursor to the modern jet ski. The radio hat sparked the concept of portable gadgets, and those outlandish sound locators were a crucial step toward developing radar. These inventions demonstrate that mistakes and seemingly absurd attempts aren't dead ends. They're an essential part of the journey to true breakthroughs. So, as we look at these creations, we're not just seeing a list of failures. We're witnessing a genuine chronicle of human courage, boundless creativity, and our unending quest for a better life. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you found this journey through bizarre inventions fascinating, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more amazing stories. Which invention from our list surprised you the most? Or perhaps you know of other, even stranger contraptions? Let us know in the comments below.